Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're here today with our good friend, Dr. Catherine Meeks. Catherine is the author of a new book titled Bridging the Rivers of Difference, a Proclamation of Unity and Resistance, published by Morehouse Publishing. We've interviewed Catherine previously for her books, The Night is Long, But Light Comes in the Morning, Meditations for Racial Healing, and Living into God's Dream, Dismantling Racism in America. She's also graciously contributed to our book, How to Heal Our Divides. Catherine spent 25 impactful years at Mercer University chairing the African American Studies program and 9 years at Wesleyan College as the Clara Carter Acree Distinguished Professor of Sociocultural Studies. In her past role as the founding executive director of the Absalom Jones Episcopal Center for Racial Healing, Dr. Meeks orchestrated spiritual retreats and workshops engaging communities in the vital work of addressing oppression. Her educational journey includes degrees from Pepperdine University, Atlanta University, Emory University. She has honorary degrees from Virginia Theological Seminary, the Seminary of the Southwest, and the Berkeley Divinity School at Yale University. Dr. Meeks' profound community impact is recognized by the President Joseph R. Biden Lifetime Achievement and Service Award and by her distinction as one of Georgia Trend magazine's notable women. Catherine's expression of her commitment to wellness and freedom is captured in her current work as founding executive director and chief midwife of the Turquoise and Lavender Institute for Transformation and Healing. And you can learn more about that at turquoiseandlavender.com. So Catherine, thanks so much for joining us. Many congratulations on all the amazing work that you've done.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. And I'm always so delighted to have a chance to talk to you. And I really do appreciate your work that you've done as well in trying to create a sense of community among diverging opinions.
Well, it's been my honor to work with people like you, so it's just been a blessing to me.
Yes, yes.
So what else would you like folks to know about you?
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess I would just say that I just turned 80 in February and I had this marvelous birthday brunch with family and friends that was just such a delight. And every time I think of it, I just have a big smile in my heart and in my face. And becoming an 80-year-old was a bit of a challenge for me to think about because I never thought about that I would live this long and be this
Uh,
old. And so I've had to do some reimagining of myself. And so writing and publishing this new book has been challenging in some ways that other books have not been.
mm,
And
mm,
I want to encourage people who are listeners, no matter where you happen to be on the age spectrum, to be always willing to reimagine where you might go because it's so important. I think that's such an important way to live, to be willing to reimagine yourself and reinvent yourself.
amen. Amen.
Yeah.
And I think earlier you told me this was your ninth book. Is that correct?
Yes. Hmm.
So when was the first?
My first book was I Want Somebody to Know My Name. It was an autobiography that was published in 1978.
Wow.
And then I've written a few things in between there and then of course the Living into God's Dream and Passionate for Justice and my second iteration of my memoir, A Quilted Life, The Reflections of a Sharecropper's Daughter,
Mm,
and now
mhm.
this book, Bridging the Rivers of Difference. So, and I have a goal of wanting to write 10 books. So I don't know if I'm going to write the 10th one or not. We'll see.
Oh, sure you are. Sure you are.
We'll
You're so
see.
close.
Yes, yes.
So before we talk about your book, tell us more about Turquoise and Lavender. I knew that's a great organization.
Well, it's the institute that I started when I left the Absalom Jones Center because I am so focused on healing. I think that we have got to never let go of the notion that individual spiritual and physical wellness will be the remedy for what's wrong with the planet. And if we want to save the planet, every one of us has got to work on ourselves and try to
Mm.
be as well as we can be. And so the Turquoise and Lavender Institute for Transformation and Healing grew out of that desire. And it's called Turquoise and Lavender because turquoise is such a wonderful stone. I have a bunch of turquoise stones here, my computer, and it has a lot of healing properties, ancient healing properties. I mean, it's been associated, I mean, since ancient times with healing. And also the color, of course, I've got on this turquoise scarf because I love turquoise. And then lavender, of course, is another one of those sources of healing in terms of lavender oil and the lavender plant and flowers. And so I wanted to have something that, like when you go to my website, there's a lot of turquoise and lavender there in terms of the colors and rocks and stuff. Because sometimes I just go to my website because it makes me feel good to just look at it. Because of that, I wanted to try to bring in those elements, those natural elements like that to my work. When I was working specifically on racial healing only, there wasn't as much space for engaging in this kind of
Mm.
having a little bigger lens to look at all of
Mm.
this. So my institute, while it's still, I do believe that racial healing is critical and we have to always be conscious about that. But the construct for healing has got to be bigger than that. We've got to have a bigger lens than that. And so my Turquoise and Lavender Institute gives me an opportunity to create that bigger umbrella
Mhm.
where racial healing is a part of the overall kind of work of healing. But I'm interested in people healing differences and brokenness in themselves and brokenness in communities and countries or whatever, because I think that's the only way we're ever gonna not always keep on killing each other and doing all the dividing things that we seem to be so um, bent on
Mm. Mm.
perpetuating.
So are you doing mostly classes or consulting or something
Well,
else as part of that effort?
I'm doing a bunch of things. I do a podcast, I do a blog, and I do a whole lot of work on social media with just putting up things that are inspirational and enlivening.
Mm.
Some people vacated Facebook. I'm still on Facebook because I believe my voice is a voice of light, and it should be, if Facebook is becoming darker, then my voice ought to be there to help shine the light, to say there's light too. There's not just darkness. And also I'm teaching, and my racial healing book has been turned into an online course by
Mm.
the Education for Ministry program for the Episcopal Church. And I contract with folks to work with them on racial healing work. I'm working with a church right now in Indiana that's contracted with me to work for a year on discerning their way forward with racial healing. So
Mm.
it's a big umbrella. And I'm a teacher from the bottom of my heart. I'm a teacher. And I love to do whatever I can do. What I like to say, I'm a midwife to the soul. I help people to give birth to parts of themselves that they didn't know existed.
Wow.
And I can do that virtually. I can do that by speaking. I write for Baptist News Global, a monthly column. I write, I teach, I talk. I'm going to keep doing all that. So
Wow. I mean,
as long as I can.
good for you. I mean,
Yeah.
how amazing. You're keeping yourself quite busy.
Yeah, well, but but it's delightful because if I didn't do this, I don't know what I'd be doing.
Mm. Mm.
I mean, if I didn't write, if I didn't have my institute, if I mean, I make greeting cards, I play, I visit friends, I do all of that, but that doesn't take up my whole day. I've got time to write articles and think about bigger issues and think about the state of the globe and how I might contribute to helping us save ourselves.
Mm. Good for you. So let's get into the book. As I mentioned, the title is Bridging the Rivers of Difference, A Proclamation of Unity and Resistance. So how did that book come about?
Well, the publisher asked me, Church Publishing, my publisher there, asked me, explored with me the idea of writing a book on immigration.
Hmm.
And I thought about it for a while and realized not only did I not know enough about immigration to try to write a whole book, I didn't think I didn't have enough passion about that particular topic to write a whole book. But what I did know was that I have a sincere amount of passion about the disparateness between the four major minority groups in this country and how much I think that disparateness is keeping us from achieving sustainable racial healing.
Hmm.
And so, and immigration issues and what's happening to Latino people is a part of that, but it's not, um, that topic by itself wasn't big enough to encompass what I was feeling really called to do. And so when I proposed this alternative to do this book, the publisher thought that was a great idea. And they said, yes, let's do it. And then I got into doing it and thought, what have I gotten myself into? I don't know enough to do this book either. What am I talking about? I just would sometimes at the end of the day think, this isn't making any sense. People are going to think I've lost my mind, and I think I may lose my mind trying to write it. And I would go to bed thinking, I don't know if I'm going to get this book done. I'm probably going to have to give that advance back to them. And then I would wake up the next morning with a sentence or an idea
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
was like a little thread that I could thread back into the conversation on my computer as I was writing. And I would feel myself being energized and thinking on down the road. That's how I got through it. It was the hardest
Wow.
book I've ever written.
Wow. How
But
long did it take to write it?
um, about about 4 months of
Okay.
really sitting, nailing myself to the floor in front of the computer. And, because a lot of this, I mean, I've been thinking about this stuff for 50 years.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not like I had to track my thoughts about it. I've thought about it, but just what I was having so much difficulty with is making a case for what the historical underpinnings for the
Hmm.
divisions, and going back and sort of looking at those historical journeys that these four groups have been on and how we have sort of interconnected, and what have been the messages that have caused us to become separate.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's so trying to make that case and then talking about the disparateness and then trying to come up with, well, so given all this, what is a remedy? What do you think we can do? And then when I started trying to work on the remedy, I thought, how can there be a remedy? There's just too much divided energy here between these four groups, but there has to be a remedy because we can't just throw our hands up and say there's no hope. And so all that was really hard. And it and
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
new territory in a way.
Hmm.
Now I'm sort of characterizing this book as being the intention for it to be a catalyst for a new conversation, a
Hmm. Hmm.
conversation on race that we haven't had before, because we've talked about racial reconciliation, which I don't believe is possible. I don't think there's anything to be reconciled to. I think that if you look at the relationships between people of color and white people in the United States, that those relationships have always been transactional and not really built upon a kind of a acknowledgement of equal humanity. I mean, how does a slave have a equal standing relationship with a slave master? How does a native person have an equal um, humanity standing with a settler who is trying to kill them? So you can't talk about broken relationships here to restore because there are no relationships worth restoring.
Hmm.
I mean, what are you going to go back to?
Hmm.
So there is a significant conversation in this book about reparations being reasonable and that collective community reparations, where we're talking about whole communities benefiting from the resource banks rather than this silly notion that's been paraded around the country of finding the descendants of slaves and giving them money. I just don't, I never have understood that, and I don't understand it. And I just think it's just a way to keep from really doing anything,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I believe that the reparations need to be community wide. So you look at communities that are underserved, and then you bring them up to some kind of better standard. That to me is a restorative action. But if you just find me and give me $2,000 so I can buy some more handbags, you didn't do anything really, because that community is still over there suffering. So I want to argue for collective community repair and not just looking for individuals. So that is a part of my conversation in this book as a part of the remedy going forward.
Hmm.
But the big thing was to try to talk about how these four groups could begin to create a new narrative for themselves
Hmm. Hmm.
that leaves out the white supremacist narrative of inferiority and supremacy and the hierarchy of human value structures that we have set up, to leave aside that and really come to a place of looking at each other as equal human beings.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, that's one of the things I love about you, Catherine, is that you don't just like analyze an issue, right, or a problem. You say, okay, what do we do about it, right?
Right,
Which is to me where the rubber really meets the road, and what really
right.
matters. So thank you for putting such an emphasis on what's a very difficult topic, like you said earlier. I mean, coming up with
Mm-hmm.
remedies for things that are so ingrained and so long
Mm-hmm.
lasting. Um, Not an easy thing.
No, and Brian, I just pulled out my hair practically trying to think of what is reasonable. I mean, what do I even imagine could be a remedy? I mean, truly, to think about when you think about there are 500 different Native American nations in the United States.
Mm,
How are we going to they can't even get together themselves. So how are they going to
mhm,
get together with African Americans? We don't even know how many different ethnic groups are represented in the African American community because of enslavement, that we came
mhm,
from all over the continent. And you brought all these different sensibilities that you can't even name in the present moment because you don't even know where you came from. And then we've got the Asian people and Latino people, and it's the same story. They've come from different parts of their world, and when they got here, we called them black. We called Africans black people, or Negroes or colored or whatever, and we called Asians we gave them a collective identity rather than their individual ethnic origins from the lands that they have come from. So we lump them into one bucket, but they don't lump into a bucket easily because they bring a lot of difference themselves. So when you try to think about how do you create unity with that much disparity between people, it's like you just get a huge headache.
mhm.
But then I said to myself, if I can't imagine this, if I can't envision it, if I can't offer some hope, then this is a ridiculous conversation that I have been trying to put here. So let me think, where do we start? So I came to the conclusion that if we started with storytelling and have each group of people come together with to form these small groups of people representing these four major groups, coming together on a regular basis with the commitment to tell each other their stories, to explore their ancient history, their ancestors, where did they come from, what were the common threads that ran through their histories. And when you look at that, the rivers are one of the that's a common thread. They
Hmm.
all four of
Hmm.
these groups have a whole bunch of symbolism and storytelling and affinity to rivers, and that's why I chose bridging the rivers, because that's a common thread. To tell these stories and look for where are the common threads, where do we connect, and that would be all you do. You just work on getting to know each other,
Mm.
eating meals together, telling stories, doing things that build relationship. And then out of that, what could come some sense of, let's see what agenda can we set that would benefit everybody? You know, can we become a group of people that really care about the general welfare? We say the preamble to the Constitution, we want to promote the general welfare, but we don't. We don't want to promote the general welfare in this country. We want to promote the welfare of a few. And it doesn't, we don't, it's not across the board. There's not equity. That's part of the problem. So can these groups then come up together with a common agenda that would benefit the four groups specifically in deconstructing racism? Now, if people listening to this will see that it's about the four groups. It's not about trying to go find some white folks to come help you make it happen. You're doing this yourself as four minority groups coming together to really care about this common agenda that you
Mm.
have set. And then, so you might not get to have your pet thing, but you will get to have, you will have to, some people will have to be willing to compromise, but you're coming up with a common thing like education or health or
That's,
economic stability or whatever.
yeah,
It will be
yeah.
a big tent issue. Then you support the politicians and the policy making that moves toward the achievement of that agenda as a group. If we do that, we will be a majority that can do whatever we want because there's enough of us. There's enough people of color in this country to do this, which is a part of why the white supremacist structure is so freaked out right now because
Yeah,
they know that too.
yeah.
And then if you do that, there will be white people who will be in the book. I talk about white folks that are allies. Those are the folks that allies are folks that show up for the protest. They come in the George Floyd moment in the midst of drama and protest and all that. They're there. But when that's all over, they're gone. And so allies are okay, but you got to understand that that's an ally and not a fellow pilgrim. But in between allies and fellow pilgrims, I created a category that's called co-resistor. And a
Mm.
co-resistor is a white person who understands that racism has wounded them too, and that they need to be working to get well themselves. And it's
Mm.
not just about people of color, but they want to help people of color, but they don't come to the struggle with some notion of being a savior. They come to the struggle understanding that they're saving themselves while they work with the other folks the people of color. And then there's a fellow pilgrim. The fellow pilgrim is the person that says, the white person who says, I'm going to take off my shoes and walk a mile in yours.
Mm.
I'm going to be here when it's inconvenient. You're going to look around in the heart of the struggle, and I will not be gone. I
Mm.
will be here because
Mm.
I'm in this with you and for myself for the long haul. So
Mm.
if we start understanding those relationships better so we won't be so disappointed when people disappear, because white folks show up and minority groups think they're pilgrims and they're really just allies. And they talk about themselves as allies. And allies are okay, but allies come and go. Fellow pilgrims stick around.
Mm.
And co-resistors stick around, but they don't stick around. They stick around better than allies, but they don't stick around like fellow pilgrims. And you understand that and you accept that to whatever extent you can. And if the minority groups have formed really good collaborative structures, they will be able to abide the infusion of white folks in the journey without turning the journey over to them,
Hmm. Hmm.
because that's what we've done as we have sought to have racial reconciliation. We're quick to want to get to having, I'm so tired of racial reconciliation Sunday
Hmm.
or racial beloved community, this, that, or the other. I'm so tired of all that because it doesn't mean anything. It's just a bunch of folks that come together for 15 minutes for a picnic and then they think they've done something and you haven't.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
haven't done anything until the major oppressive structures in this country have been destabilized and deconstructed and reimagined. And we don't want to talk about any of this because that's not what folks are in for. They're in for the performance and the window dressing, and we got to get past that, but it's gonna take people of color taking on this as their work and working together. It's not gonna happen with what we've been doing. We've been doing this for how many years now?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
look at where we are. So clearly we need a new strategy. And that's why I started to think of this book as a catalyst for a new conversation.
Mm.
I hope that's what it will be.
Well, I love your focus on the community level of things, and because even
Yeah.
if we just solved education, you know what I mean, and
Right.
made that right, that alone, would be monumental. But then if we did the same thing for
Yes.
healthcare and, other areas, but even if we just tackled one big one, that would benefit everyone,
Hmm.
you
That's
know.
right. That's
So
right. Poor white folks will be just as benefited by
absolutely.
better education and better health services as African Americans and Native people and Latino people and Asian people. We've got to quit this. Uh, this will be good for us, but I don't want you to have it. So I'm willing to suffer too. Like in Georgia, we have not been in favor of extending Medicaid because white people, and particularly leadership, didn't want to do it. Well, you just hurt yourself.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, you
absolutely.
you just
Yeah,
you just hurt yourself to hurt other people
yeah.
because you think that undocumented people might get some health care. So what if they do? You know, you're not getting it either. And does that make any sense? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
You
You
know, the,
know,
the us versus them mindset is just so ingrained. And
yes, it is.
that's what's, really, really difficult to undo. And,
I
we're
know.
not close. We're not even close.
No, and I spent a lot of time trying to think about how do we get on this track? That's the book opens with a conversation about othering, and I go all the way back to Cain and Abel when Cain, this murder because your sacrifice to God wasn't as pleasing as your brother's, and instead of you saying, well, how could I make a better sacrifice? What do I need to do? Instead of asking those kinds of questions, you just go kill your brother because your brother somehow caused you not to do what you want. And how many times have we blamed somebody out there for what was wrong rather than saying, well, what's really wrong here? What's going on? How do we fix this? And so I think we're so into that, somebody else's fault. Like right now, we have all this stuff about how Latinos are at fault for everything that's wrong in this country and how they're taking this, that, and the other. It is just such a nonsense
It's
conversation.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It really is. And it's so tiring because it's so unhelpful.
So, you and I have been around this planet for a while, right? So we've had the benefit of seeing, a lot of change in different areas. Um,
Yeah,
what, how about racism? How do
yeah.
you see that today, versus, when you were younger, for instance?
Well, when I was a kid growing up in Arkansas, I didn't I didn't know much. You just you feel a lot of stuff. You feel the oppression, but you don't even know what to call it. I was saying earlier in an interview that when I was a little girl, we go to the doctor and the doctor's office, we had to walk through past the white waiting room where people had lamps and couches to the hallway with one light bulb and straight chairs against the wall. And I would refuse to sit down
Mm,
because, and I did, if you had asked me why I wasn't sitting down, I don't even know if I could have told you. But there was something so wrong about that
mhm,
until I felt like I don't want to participate here. I don't want to, this place isn't welcoming. I don't want to be here. I mean, that was, must have been what my soul was saying. And all I did was just stand up the whole time. And I did that as a kid. And so as I grew older, I realized that Arkansas was not a good place to be because I didn't feel like I could be anything there. I had to get
mm,
away. I had older sisters and brothers in California, and I got out when I graduated from high school. And I've never lived in Arkansas since and don't ever intend to. However, I do live in Georgia. So there's not that much difference
mm,
between Georgia and Arkansas. I think that we have what we have done is we gained some um, capacity to do racism more covertly
mhm,
and to cover it up. So it takes you longer to identify what it is, you know. And if you, and as a Black person, you don't want to spend every day trying to decide what was racist and what wasn't. So you just sort of just call it all racist and let it go. Some things are, some things aren't, but it's too much trouble to try to figure it out. So I think we have covered up a lot. And I think that having this period that we're in right now is evidence of how we've covered up stuff and how we're being challenged to be more honest about who we really are and who we have claimed to be versus who we really are. And so I feel like in some ways, I feel more hopeful about this time now that we're in than other times because I don't think we're in the business of pretending.
mm,
I think that
mm,
the things have gotten so out of hand until we can't pretend. We have to face it. So I think from the time I was a child till getting out of college, in the 60s and 70s, we were still feeling pretty good about ourselves. And we went through all that civil rights movement and we thought we were on our way. We had the Voting Rights Act and we thought things were going to be just great. I'm just surprised at the way we're talking about voting in the
yeah.
2026, because I thought when we passed all those laws back then that we will never be at that stage again. But look at us, look at where we are.
Mhm,
So for me, that's a statement that we didn't mean it when we did it.
mhm.
We did it holding our noses, and people have been trying to undo it ever since. So I think that right now we're in the phase of seeing how hypocritical the United States is about race and about equity and all those things that go with wanting to have a more level playing field. And for me, that's a good thing. It's a good thing because we
Well,
are
it's like
now able to see.
the cover up that you mentioned is being uncovered, right? It's being revealed.
Right. hmm And that's good.
Yeah.
That is very good because and the other thing is that people of color thought we got liberated in the 60s and we didn't. We some things changed, some things are better. That there were before the Trump administration laws that would hold white people accountable for abuse of people of color. I think
Hmm.
that may be more challenging right now with this administration because they
Yeah.
don't believe in any kind of laws about anything. But but we'll get back to that. I mean, when because they're not going to be here forever, and things will get back to some semblance of sanity at some point. But the point is, in the 1900s, you could just be lynched or run off your land or killed. That's not going to happen now. I mean, we've got some. Well, it's happening to Latino people some, but they're in a little bit of different place than folks who were actually born here. But the point is that you have some legal standing that we have some people of color have some legal standing that we didn't have 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of overall uh, change that gives you, so you don't have to, I want to live in a world where when my black son goes out in the car, I don't have to worry about a policeman killing him.
Mm-hmm.
That's the world I'm working for. So till we get there, we've got a long ways to
Mm-hmm.
go, but we're a long ways from where we used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you have to be careful to acknowledge the changes that have been made, but you can't let that lull you to sleep. So that's how it feels different to me. It's racism is mighty strong and mighty virulent in this country, but it's not the same way it was 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you that it's like, it's more evident now, right? Like
Right.
you said, the hypocrisy, the racism that we thought maybe was fading, is
Mm-hmm.
rearing its ugly head, which isn't
Mm-hmm.
good, but as you said, it clarifies the situation,
It's good for us to your Baldwin James Baldwin says that whatever you're trying to heal, you've got a name. And if you don't name it, you can't heal it. I think that the hypocrisy keeps you from moving forward
hmm
because you're busy trying to maintain the Hippocratic way, the hypocrisy of you spend your energy on trying to keep that persona, and so you think you're doing something. But when you have to just look at the woundedness, then you either have to choose to do something about it or to accept that you're choosing not to do something about it. And that's a completely different place to be from pretending and trying to keep the cover on that pot of pretense.
So I'd like to read from one of the endorsements of the book. This comes from Heidi Kim, Executive Director of the Episcopal Coalition for Racial Equity and Justice,
Mm-hmm.
who says, she lays bare the ways that many anti-racist movements and teachings have actually deepened the divides between the four major groups of people of color, and doing so offers us a humbling and challenging path to a more authentic form of unity and resistance. So I wasn't really aware of this issue of, some of the anti-racist movements having actually caused more divides, kind of
Mm-hmm.
among those four different groups. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, competition is capitalist's is capitalism's way of keeping itself going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But competition can be very destructive,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what you're competing about. I mean, if we've made competition into a god almost, and so even within, um, say, let's just take African Americans because I know more about that than anybody else. We get to competing within the group for the scarce dollars for doing social justice work. People don't want to share. People don't want to form collaborations. Everybody wants their own 501c3.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of stuff thing, it's like all of us want to be at the top of the heap rather than saying, let's come together and let's share the money, let's share the power, let's share whatever. We just have no commitment to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to be competitors with each other. We get to be and then the African Americans will say Latinos and Asians don't know about oppression and they don't and on and there's all the hatred on both sides of that fence. Like we already, I mean, you probably know some of these stories about Asian shopkeepers in Black communities
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
abuses and the violence that they are quickly ready to perpetrate against Black people. So that kind of intra-racial divisiveness and interracial divisiveness where in terms of gangs and stuff like that. But some of it is not as violent as gangs. It's just people being unwilling to see each other as equal human beings. We
mm,
don't see
mm,
ourselves in one another, so we think that we other each other.
mhm,
And
mm,
then we have I mean, it's a funny dynamic because you've got white supremacy othering everybody. And then you've got the others, the othered people, the people that are being othered by white supremacy, othering one another
mm, mm,
within their group, and then the other people of color outside of their group. So you got this kind of triangle here of negative energy.
mm,
So here we are. We're all caught with the oppressor holding us down. And
mm,
then we are oppressing ourselves and then ready to oppress other people rather than seeing ourselves and other people as being in the same boat with one common oppressor. We created a couple more layers of oppression ourselves, which is
well,
why it's so important to get over this.
yeah, yeah. Well, divide and conquer, right? I mean, this is,
Mhm.
just another example of that having been the model.
Well, Brian, if the oppression, the oppressors capacity to keep the oppressed fighting each other
Hmm.
is a major strategy
Yeah,
that has
yeah.
worked very well because
Hmm.
if you spend all your time fighting within yourselves, they don't have to worry about you fighting them because you don't have any energy for that.
Hmm.
Once you get through, not being kind to each other, not thinking about each other as a fellow struggler, but as an enemy. I mean, we're down to doing a lot of that. But and then even like in politics, we have so much divisiveness until we spread our capacity to actually have people that could help us because we, don't want to vote for them. I mean, we could have had Stacey Abrams as a governor in Georgia. That woman is smart. She would have been a fantastic governor. But there were so many um, people, particularly males and black males at that didn't want to vote for her because she was a woman and she wasn't kind enough to them. She
Hmm.
wasn't accommodating to them. Well,
Wow.
they don't worry about, you know, somebody else being accommodating. So since you're sitting here worrying about Stacey Abrams not inviting you to dinner, we get Brian Kemp as governor, who ain't gonna invite you to dinner and gonna keep you from having any way to get dinner if he can help it. So it's kind of like the old people talk about, cutting off your nose to spite your face. That's what it ends up to be because
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
ridiculous. You
Hmm.
you know, you don't have to be friends with, you don't even have to like the person if you think they'll be a better leader. If you think that's I was gonna there were some folks that I thought if they got to be the candidate for an office that I would vote for somebody in the other party that I thought was better because I don't care about Democratic Republican. I care about who's going to be the best leader. And sometimes you have a bad choice from your party, so then you need to look at who else might be better
Hmm.
because I'd rather have an honest public servant who called himself or herself Republican than somebody who's Democrat who's a Democrat who is not an honest public servant.
Hmm. Yep.
But you got to be willing to negotiate with yourself. And there's so much of that. I think that's what Heidi is talking about. I mean,
Hmm.
and Heidi
Hmm.
is Asian. She's Korean. So she has seen this from the other side. What she has experienced a lot of is African Americans and other folks thinking that she doesn't deserve to be consider herself a part of an oppressed minority group.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we oppress those people that we brought here in those worker programs, the Chinese and all those
Sure.
folks when
Sure.
the building of the railroads
Yep.
and during the Industrial Revolution, we treated those people worse than animals. And so we don't have we can't point any finger. Nobody can point any fingers at anybody else. We have all suffered under the thumb of white supremacy.
Hmm. Hmm. So you mentioned this earlier, and in Greg Sterling's endorsement, he talks about it too. He says that the book invites whites who are willing to be more than allies, become pilgrims to join in the effort to overturn systemic racism that is embedded within our culture. So, what can we
Mhm.
do to become pilgrims?
Well, I think the most important thing is to own up to how racism has injured you as a white person. To think about that, because when I've taught these classes that all over the country now, the most silence I have in any given day in a dismantling racism class is when I ask white people to name how racism has injured them.
Hmm.
That is the most silent part of the day because
Hmm.
people have never thought about that. And if they've thought about it, they haven't come up with anything, but the fact that if you have lived in a country where just it's in the virus of the fabric of the country that you are superior because of your skin color to people that don't look like you, that aren't the people of color. And you may not have been that conscious of that, but you have been affected by it, and it has caused you to make choices that reflect that spirit, even if you don't know what they are, because a lot of people are just flat unconscious and walking through the world thinking that the world, this disparateness between the races, oh, that's just reality. That's just the way it is. Well, no, that is the way it is, but that's not the way it should have been. So if you're just, I had a white person in a class I was doing that was the most honest comment that I've heard probably ever from somebody white. I talked about the fact that we needed to burn down this racist house and build a new one. And this woman said, yes, I do agree with you, but I'm so afraid that if I burn the house down, I'll burn my house down. And so that's it. I mean, that's it right
Yeah,
there. So
yeah,
so then
yeah.
are you willing to burn down your house
Mhm.
that you have benefited from because of this structure that was put into place, even though you might not think it's the best structure in the world, but you're benefiting from it, and are you willing to name it
Mm, mm,
and resist it? Are you willing to stand up for everybody to have access rather than you're just enjoying the access and thinking you there because you deserve to be, because you worked so hard? How many times have I heard, well, I worked really hard for everything I've got? Well, you did, but a lot of people helped you.
mm,
And a lot of people before you made it possible for you to be where you are. So to own up to how racism has caused you to be blind, unconscious, to miss out on other people's culture, you know, to be excited about eating Mexican food, but to dislike Mexicans is ridiculous. To be excited about Native American spirituality, but you don't know a single one and you're not trying to find any to know. Those are evidence of those things are evidence of the wounding that
mm,
has occurred. So to be waking up to that is a place to start. I mean, like I try to make a point out of reading people that are not black and not white, to watch movies that have people in them, other people of color, to learn about um, people other than black people and white people, because I'm very interested in the common threads. I think that's a comfort to me to know that there is this common thread that makes us human beings that runs through everybody. And when you get right down to it, it's like Maya Angelou says on this commercial that MSNBC has her on. We have more in common. We are more alike than we are unalike.
mhm,
And
mhm,
and I'm much more interested in that than I am how we're unalike. And I
mm,
think that that's where you start. If you're a white person and you really want to be on this journey, you don't need to go run out and try to start a soup kitchen in a poor community. You need to look at yourself and see, how has racism injured you? What have you done about that? how are you willing to share that with the people in your circle? How much risk are you willing to take to create a world where things are really different and not just doing window dressing?
Yeah, yeah. I think that the whole concept of risk taking is a big one in this space.
Yeah, it
And
is.
people don't, they just walk away from it, right? They just want to sweep
Right.
it under the rug.
Yeah. Or to say, well, my family didn't have slaves, and
Yeah,
we were
yeah.
the good white folks, basically, is what you're saying. So because we were the good white folks, we don't have to concern ourselves with this.
Hmm.
Well, you might have been, but it is about more than you and your family.
Right, exactly.
It is about a
Way
collective
more.
culture, and honestly, that's been one of my greatest beefs with trying to teach about this. And sometimes I'm the only person of color in the room and I'm trying to teach this class, is to reduce this to just being about you and your family, because it's you and your family matter, but you don't matter to the extent that the whole community matters. And
Mhm.
you need to have some sense about being a part of a larger community than and how so your family might have been wonderful. I'm not going to argue with you about that. But your family is not determining everything that's happening in the country. And while your family is wonderful, my son is being killed by some police officer whose family wasn't wonderful. Doesn't that bother you? Don't you care about that? Don't you want to care about that? Even if you don't care now, don't you want to? Don't you want to see that? And that's always a interesting conversation.
Yeah, really. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for being with us and your wisdom and for writing this book that I know is going to be very helpful to many folks and to, I hope, the growing equity among communities.
Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you so much for having me come and have this opportunity, because I care about this so deeply, and I want to make this message as visible as possible all across this land. And I hope it will resonate with people,
Hmm.
and people will start saying, yeah, she's got a point. A
I
little
think,
crazy, thinking it can even happen, but if we don't dream of things that we haven't seen, they won't ever come to be.
no, I
So I
think you
think we have
definitely have a
to.
point. I think definitely people will listen. So thank you for doing that.
All right. Thank you and take care.
All right. Again, Catherine's book is Bridging the Rivers of Difference, a Proclamation of Unity and Resistance. And please check out the website turquoiseandlavender.com. Thanks again, Catherine, and
All
best
right.
wishes on the book launch.
Thank you. Bye.